It's the DNP Project Podcast with your hosts, Dr. Molly Bradshaw and Dr. Tracy Vitale.
Welcome to the DNP Project Podcast, where we share tips, inspiration, and more. My name is Dr. Molly Bradshaw, and I'm the co-host of this podcast series, along with my colleague, Dr. Tracy Vitale. I'm going to be talking to you today about the DNP c or DNP candidate. What does it mean, and is it a real thing? Can DNP students use this credential when they hit a certain point in the DNP program? I was inspired to write a blog about this topic after I saw the question posted in a Facebook group. So let's take a few minutes in this tip series to unpack this idea together. So first, remember, the DNP is a practice-focused terminal degree in nursing. It's not a PhD. However, many DNP programs were originally modeled after PhD programs. In the PhD model, when a student completes their coursework, they are often then approved to begin their research. The university or program may grant a PhD student at that time the right to use the terminology or the credential candidate, meaning that they've completed their coursework and they're ready to go into the research phase of the process. The important thing to note here is that it's the university or the program that grants the right to use that credential. It's not universal across the board. Now, when you translate that to the DNP model, some DNP programs might allow a DNP student to use the credential DNP c at a certain point in the program. Likely, if this is approved, it would be after the approval of the DNP Project Proposal. However, it is program specific. You should not use that credential. And I repeat, do not use the credential unless there is explicit language in your DNP program's handbook giving you permission to use that credential. It's not a blanket uniform, every DNP student gets to use that credential. You have to have permission, or it has to be granted from the program that you're in. Now, in your program's DNP handbook or guidelines, there should be language about the use of that credential if you're permitted to use it. So you need to go and check your handbook. And it will vary across programs depending on the structure and the nature of not only your program, but also the university that you're attending. In an interesting blog by Jennifer Mesnick, she pointed out that 50% of doctoral students leave before they finish. It's pretty incredible. She explains that in the PhD context, some people remain in candidate status forever. It's a very long period of time in some cases that they remain in candidate status, which was some of the thinking behind originally awarding that credential. But our goal as DNP educators is to give you a skill set that helps you solve practice problems in evidence-based ways and then implement and evaluate the impact of those solutions. But practice is fast-paced. We don't want people in DNP programs over long periods of time. We want to give you these skill sets, and we want you to get out there and get into the real world and start doing some of these evidence-based projects. So remember, we don't want DNP projects to take years and years and years. We need you to learn rapid cycle projects because, again, practice is dynamic. So remember, the focus of the DNP degree is not the same as the focus of the PhD. And we talk about that in a previous episode in our podcast. So this is just my opinion. Don't sweat the whole DNPc thing. Don't worry about it. Don't use it, because hopefully you're not going to be there long enough for it to matter. And again, in some programs, it's not even discussed or allowed to be used. Now, just to be transparent and give you my experience, in my DNP program where I went, they did allow use of DNPc as a credential once you completed the project proposal. And there was language about that in my DNP handbook and in my DNP project guidelines at that university. The university that I teach at right now, I'm the coordinator for the DNP program. At our university, we do not allow, or we don't really mention, use of the DNPc credential. So students that are attending my university should not be using DNPc as a credential, because there is not specific permission to do that from our program or from our university. So that's what you need to go back and check and see, is it a real thing? But just because you see other DNP students doing it doesn't mean that you should do it. So I hope that clarifies the DNPc. Is it a real thing? Is it not? Gives you a little perspective of that. But in my opinion, I want my students to get graduated, get to that highest level of nursing practice. I don't want to waste time worrying about the DNPc candidacy, because hopefully you're not going to be there that long for it to make any difference. So in my opinion, let it go. Let's move on. That's a PhD thing. And let's get these DNP degrees done so that we can get you out there into practice. So always remember to follow the recommendations of the DNP program at your university. If you want to follow myself and Dr. Vitale a little bit more, you can find our DNP Project Workbook at springer.com, the DNP Project Workbook, a step-by-step process for success. You can find me at dnpmollyb.org, and you can find more of our materials at DNP Success. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Dr. Molly Bradshaw and Dr. Tracy Vitale on the DNP Project Podcast. Check out the DNP Project YouTube channel at DNP Success on YouTube.